Thank you everyone for joining our coaching call with Michael Silver. I am Joe Halpern, the CIO of Fountainhead Asset Management. We're an outsourced chief investment office platform that provides quality institutional level investment services. And we have the full suite of services, and the whole idea behind it is to allow you, the advisor, to really focus on your business, to be able to focus on business development, to be able to focus on providing what's needed for that end client. And ultimately, we've identified 4 gating issues to exponential growth. And those issues are scale, time, service, and differentiation. And so partnering with a group like ours, we're able to provide all those services. So again, you could focus on what you do best. Within that, even when you get by, right, and even in addition to those investment services that we provide, there's still some impediments to scaling. And that's why we bring in Michael Silver, who's a coach. And this month in particular, I'm really excited about the topic: segmentation, service models, and creating capacity, right? So step 1 is going and capturing and bringing in appropriate clients, and then obviously managing appropriately for them. At some point you hit a level that makes it really hard to continue to expand. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Silver to take us through it and elaborate. Thank you,
Good.
Michael.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you very much. So good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are all based today. I'm normally based in New Jersey, like the Fountainhead team. I'm actually in Los Angeles today. So this background you see is not the true background. If you could see it, you'd see the downtown LA skyline from where I am in Beverly Hills. So it is nice to get back on the road. But thanks for joining us. This is part 2 in our ongoing series here, tying in coaching and best practices to what you all do every single day. A little background on myself and my firm, Focus Partners. My business partner, Eric Sheikwitz, and I founded the firm 15 years ago after being advisors ourselves for many years. And what we do all day, every single day, is coach and consult to advisors, teams, and the firms you all work for or running your own firms. Our goal is to help you do 2 things mainly: run a more organized and more efficient practice, which is what today's topic falls into. The other side of the coin of what we help do is really around growth. How can you continue to grow your practice? But in order to do that, you need to make sure you have the capacity. And when we think about capacity, there are a lot of different ways that could go. Number 1, what we're talking about today is segmentation. How can you get your client service model in order to make sure everyone is being serviced the way they expect and deserve? But what Joe mentioned and what they do with Fountainhead Asset Management is they also help you create capacity, because if you can hand off the asset and portfolio management to an outsourced CIO, you're also freeing up time. So it's almost a double whammy here by segmenting the practice, making sure you have a tight service model to create bandwidth, and the same thing with what Fountainhead does. But what I'm going to do here now is just turn up my video so we can focus on the slides. And by way of an overview today, we're going to talk about why service needs to be a priority, first and foremost. Then I will define the differences between segmentation and a service matrix, review the service model components, which is probably the most important part of this. And then once you have this fancy spreadsheet that we've helped you create, you have to use it. It's all around implementation. And from there, it could be a marketing tool to really track all the different types of initiatives and campaigns you want to be working on. First off, why a service model needs to be a priority. You know the old adage, you want to work smart versus hard. You need to manage your time efficiently. As advisors, as wealth managers, you are juggling all different kinds of competing priorities. In general, your job is to source new business, service that client base, and obviously manage the money or manage the managers of your clients' assets. So you really need to make sure you're managing your time efficiently. And as you grow, that your clients will be serviced the way they expect. Along those lines, you want to establish client expectations. I'll mention this again, but it's important. You don't want a situation or a disconnect where you think a client should be called quarterly and the client, as an extreme example, wants to speak to you every week. That's really not going to work. We oftentimes say to advisory practices, what makes you different? They say, oh, well, we offer top-notch service. Well, if everybody says that, then it's kind of a commodity and not necessarily a differentiator, because the bottom line is you are in the service business. And there was a study done, I don't know, about 8 years ago, and it ranked the top 10 reasons why clients would leave their advisor. And performance, I think, was number 7 on the list. The top responses, the top forms of feedback, all had something to do with service and the relationship. So it's critical that you offer a top-notch service experience. And then the big theme today is how can you create capacity? You know, I'd love to do a survey for each of you on the call today or listening to the replay, how many relationships you manage. Not how many accounts you have, because one family could have 12 accounts, but how many different servicing households do you manage? You know, some people will go by Supernova, which is 100. The average number in the industry is pushing 200 relationships per advisor. You know, if you run a private wealth practice with ultra high net worth, we coach some teams that might just have 40 relationships, but they're running $1 billion+ for those 40 families. The number I like to use is 150. I think it's a very manageable number, and it's based off of something called Dunbar's number. If you look it up online, Dunbar's number, it's not that old. It's maybe 30 years old, this concept, but it started out in the military, and studies showed that any unit, any platoon, any group in the military could not be more than 150 people, because past that point, the leaders of that group, their ability to effectively manage those relationships broke down. It then went into corporate America. Any group or subsidiary or whatever you want to fill in the blank there, past 150, not effective to manage those relationships. And it's also used in financial services. So we go by Dunbar's number, an average of 150 relationships per advisor. So ask yourself, what happens when I hit capacity? Am I at capacity? Am I approaching capacity? Am I way over? We work with advisors that have hundreds and hundreds of relationships. And I'll tell you, people are falling through the cracks. So if you think about your own capacity, what are you going to do? Will you continue to just bring on more and more relationships? And we hope the service model doesn't break down. Will you bring on maybe a junior advisor to hand off some accounts fully to or partially? If there's a client you speak to every month and do quarterly reviews, maybe someone on your team does those monthly check-ins and you now just step in for an annual review. So you can keep the relationship, but hand off some of that service. Maybe you want to ask some clients to leave that aren't a fit or don't have potential or don't take your advice. There are a lot of different options what you can do, but you need to take a step back and really ask yourself, where are you versus your full capacity? So here's the reality. It is impossible to offer the same types of services to every single client. If you're new to the business, you have 20 clients, fine. You give them the same level of service experience. But my favorite phrase, and segmentation is one of my favorite topics, is you want to treat your clients fairly, but you don't have to treat them equally. Okay, treat them fairly, but not equally. That is really one of our main mantras. So why do you want to implement a service model? First off, you want to offer a consistent client experience. I mentioned this before. If a client wants to speak to you every month, and according to what you're doing for them, you think you should only speak to them quarterly, there's a disconnect. We don't want any ambiguity. We want to make sure everyone is on the same page and expectations are set on the front end of any new relationship. Next, strong service builds trust and rapport. Plain and simple. The more you're in front of your clients, the stickier the relationships are, right? We want that Velcro factor. We want people to stay with you for the long term. And then as a follow-on to that, the more you talk to and see and do videos with your clients, the more opportunities you'll uncover. And this is what you all do every day. You know the right questions to ask. If someone says, yeah, I think I'm going to take an early retirement package, you can help them with their rollover, with that exit bonus, with them vesting of stock options, whatever it might be. As you speak to people more and more, you will uncover opportunities. Next, it's a way to get feedback. The more you talk to clients, the more questions you can ask, or you may get unsolicited feedback. But make sure to say, especially on the front end of a new relationship, how are we doing so far? Is there anything you'd like more of, less of? Is there anything we can do differently? Want to make sure we do everything you're expecting from us. And finally, old adage, but work smarter, not harder. You want to create efficiencies in your practice, streamline multiple processes, and make sure that you have a very manageable and realistic service model. And again, back to that word of capacity. How are you creating capacity by having good processes in place to focus on the growth component of your business? And I sit in a unique position because we coach advisors all over the country across all types of firms, wires, regionals, independents, RIAs, everything. From trainees to our biggest producing team this year will do 47 million in revenue. Sounds like a whole firm, but it actually a group within a firm. But the bottom line is this: there's money in motion everywhere. I don't care if markets are up, down, or sideways. If you're in your office, if you're working remotely, or if you did an Airbnb in a different location to work because you can, There's money everywhere. So get your piece. The service model to me is an overarching term. It's actually made up of two core components. One is the segmentation, which is the tiering of your clients based on different metrics. And your service matrix is, okay, excuse me, now I have the tiering, who gets what? You can't have one without the other. To do a fancy spreadsheet, which you'll see in a minute, is great. But then what are you going to do with it? That's the goal here. So of every slide in this shorter presentation today, this is the guts of it right here. This is how we do a segmentation. It is not something we just send to advisors, a blank template. It's collaborative. There's steps back and forth that you do, we do, you do, we do, until we get a really good finished product. It's proprietary to our firm. It's very customizable and completely formula driven. But what we get from you initially are 3 data points. Name of the client, and you can send codes or numbers if you don't want to share the names, it's fine. Assets under management, and some type of trailing 12-month revenue production GDC number, whatever you come up with. What we then do is we look at your book from the outside in. And there's another tab in the spreadsheet, but if you look at where it says asset score, we put in different breakpoints, the highest score being a 4, the lowest being a 1. So hypothetically, we might say, okay, any relationships 5 million and up get 4 points, 2.5 million to 5 million get 3 points, 1 to 2.5 million get 2 points, anything smaller gets a point. Again, completely customizable. We'll then do the same thing for revenue. Is it 25,000 and up, 10 to 25, 5 to 10, 5 and smaller? Also completely customizable. Most advisors will then stop. They'll say, all right, I'm going to rank my clients by assets or production, revenue, and break them into tiers. We add another metric we call relationship score, which is qualitative, which everything else thus far has been quantitative. So on the bottom here, you see 4 questions. Is the client nice and easy to deal with versus someone who's not very nice? Do they take your advice? Yes or no? And it's binary in our spreadsheet. If the answer is yes, you get a 1. If it's no, you get a 0. Okay, so are they nice and easy to deal with? Do they take your advice versus, let me think about it, or do it yourself? Or number 3, are they a referral source and an advocate helping you to replicate people like themselves? And do they have potential? Yes or no? You know who in your book of business has potential to do more over the long term. Yeah, someone's going to sell a business or just made partner in a law firm or will get an inheritance or whatever it might be. We know what potential looks like. So once you add up the asset, the revenue, the relationship score, to the left, you get a total score, 12 being the highest. Automatically, once you get a total score, again to the left, you get a tier, A, B, C, D, platinum, gold, silver, bronze. The best one we ever saw, we used to coach an advisor outside of Philadelphia in the Cherry Hill area who was a retired airline pilot, now a very successful financial advisor. His tiers, and this was internal, not exterior facing, were first class, business class, coach, and luggage. So you're muted, but probably a few of you are chuckling right now. True story. What are you doing for your baggage? This goes right back to capacity. Are you doing campaigns to try to move your people up, or are you trying to move them out? A lot of different things you can do. If you look along the right side of this spreadsheet here, there's an ROA analysis to see who is really paying you and who isn't. And are there ways to make some of these assets more productive? Obviously putting the client's best interest first. So that's the segmentation piece. Next is you have your tiers, who gets what? So here's some examples of what you're going to be looking to map out based on the tiering. Who gets monthly calls? These are what I call HIG calls, H-I-G. How's it going? Hey, Joe, it's Michael. I just wanted to check in. A little bumpy week for the markets, but rest assured, we reviewed your portfolios, comfortable with our allocation. Here's what's driving the volatility this week. Stay the course. Can I answer any questions for you? Just a simple check-in call. Who gets more substantive quarterly reviews? Who gets an annual review to update their financial plan, find out things going on in their lives? How do you price your practice according to different breakpoints or different levels or tiers of clients? What products, platforms, strategies, solutions, fill in the blank, are you using for a small client versus a very, very affluent client? Because you may do things differently. And what's the wow piece of what you do? For different tiers of clients, who gets what as far as a holiday gift versus a holiday card and a birthday card versus a birthday lunch? And that's a whole nother discussion. But we're big fans of surprise and delight, or what you all know as the wow experience. So the service model is the combination, right? It's the umbrella under which falls the segmentation and the service matrix. And once you get this fancy spreadsheet, It's really the roadmap that outlines your client experience from the servicing perspective. It lets you see a picture of what you need to do for whom and when. And once you have the spreadsheet, some people just use that and they keep it on their desk and they check boxes each month or each quarter as they see and speak to people. Personally, the utopian situation here, the ultimate goal is to automate this within your CRM system. That way it pops up in different recurring cycles, 30, 60, 90, 180 day, annual cycling of when you need to be in front of people. That's when it's really paint by numbers and people don't fall through the cracks. That's what we really want to work towards with this whole exercise. So here is a very small snippet of a much broader spreadsheet, but the top section here, what you see, that's the segmentation. The next piece is other tabs on the spreadsheet is who gets what when. Okay, who meeting 1, meeting 2, meeting 3, meeting 4, call 1, call 2. So in this model, for example, these are, actually goes all the way across, but it's quarterly reviews, an annual deep dive, and monthly check-in phone calls. So typically what we see is a 12-6-4-2 model. So if we say 12, it's monthly check-in calls and quarterly reviews for your A clients. Maybe for your C tier, it's an annual review and quarterly check-in calls as an example, but you do what you think is appropriate. Next, you can use it from a marketing perspective. Any different type of initiative or campaign you want to work on, you can add a column to the spreadsheet. So I just put in a few examples here. Are there rollover opportunities? Have we identified the beneficiaries to make sure we're building bridges with the next generation of our clients? And as another example, have we done an insurance review? Maybe the life insurance they bought 25 years ago, they can get more face value for the same premium. You never know. So these are just a few ideas, but it can be a living, breathing document of every different type of initiative or campaign from a marketing perspective that you want to work on. So in summary, you need to take a step back and analyze your capacity and how you want to manage it as you approach capacity, as you're at capacity, or if you're you're already busted through that and you have way too many clients. The goal is to replicate your top clients and also allocate more time towards business development. You want, over time, you want fewer, bigger relationships. And then my favorite phrase, like I said, you want to treat your clients fairly. You don't have to treat them equally. And then the metrics we used for this exercise are looking at your client relationships by assets, by revenue and GDC, and then by relationship quality, which is really the softer side. And what you want to do is define specific service standards for each different tier of your book and offer a very consistent client experience, which will create stickiness, more business, other types of business, and ultimately referrals and introductions because your clients are so happy. What I'm going to do now, just briefly, before we bring on our speaker today, or for a little back and forth, Gaetano Sacco from Fountainhead Advisors, is our contact information. It would be our pleasure to offer anyone on the call today a complimentary coaching session. Reach out to us. A member of our team will follow up. The goal here is to really pick our brains, share what's going on with your business. We're happy to share best practices, ideas, and you get a little flavor for the coaching. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity today with Fountainhead and Joe and team at Fountainhead Asset Management. What I'm going to do now is we're going to bring on Gaetano Sacco, who is a financial advisor, and I'm going to ask him a bunch of questions, and he has some great responses for us based on the topic for today. So let me just stop the share here. I will put the camera back on. And as soon as Gaetano is up, we will do some Q&A here. There he is.
What's up?
How are you today?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I am enjoying being in Los Angeles in very perfect weather. So Gaetano, let's start this way.
It sounds like you should let us see the background. I bet it looks really nice.
You know what, the sun, where my room is, the sun would be just glaring behind me, but you would see downtown LA. And to the left, you'd see the Hollywood sign. It's pretty nice.
That is pretty cool. Yeah, for sure.
Good to be back on the road. So let's start this way. Just give us a brief overview of your background in the industry and kind of your practice, where you are today with things.
Sure. So I'm, again, my name is Gaetano Sacco. I'm 34, going into my 12th year in the business. I graduated from Penn State, and this was my first job. Although this job has taken a couple of different looks over the last 11 and a half years. I started my career at MetLife, and which everyone knows is a very big insurance company, and the training there and the the focus at MetLife was a bit different than it is at Fountainhead Advisors, which, obviously is an RIA. But I did have a lot of really good mentorship early on. So although I was kind of in a position where, because I didn't really have a natural market, I grew up in Pennsylvania and started my career in New Jersey. And I'm not ashamed to say it, I come from pretty humble beginnings. So even if all my family did live in New Jersey, I didn't have a rich uncle to roll an annuity over to. My time at MetLife was focused on just building a client base any way I could. So especially at the beginning, it wasn't very much asset management focused. It was a lot of insurance. Then through really good mentorship, I started to build up an asset management practice. And specifically in 2015, I changed my focus to fee-based financial planning. So I would say the first 5 or 6 years of my business, of my career, was working with people over the age of 55 that I found any way I could to do any kind of business, whether it was insurance, maybe some annuity, maybe some investment. But then as my friends and my network got older, I started to realize that there were really good opportunities within my own social network. And I had 5, 6 years of experience to talk about now. So I felt a little more confident talking to them. And so I would say since, call it 2015, I've been only bringing on new clients through fee-based financial planning. Many of those clients are Henrys, high earners, not rich yet.
Love that phrase. Yeah.
And it's when I came over to Fountainhead Advisors in August of 2019, so we're like 26, 27 months out since I got here. I had 11.5 million under management on the day that I left. As of this morning, I have 47.7 million under management.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a really interesting ride to transition a book. And basically I finished transitioning my book and then COVID happened, and who knew that 2020 would be a really good year. So to kind of wrap up your initial question, I was speaking with our CIO, Joe Halpern, only a few weeks ago about how I feel like now, after 2 years of really growing my practice pretty quickly, I feel like I might be suffering from some capacity issues. And it was his idea for us to connect and have this call today.
Good. No, perfect timing. And congrats on that growth the last couple of years. So have you formally segmented your client base? And if you did, what criteria did you use? Was it similar to what I talked about today, on the basis if you have segmented the book?
Yeah, that's a great question. I did segment my book, but it was nowhere near as organized as what you showed today. So I had the labeling that we use at Fountainhead is similar to what everybody is pretty much used to. But instead of just having A, B, C, or D, we look at it as, AAA clients are clients that have lots of assets and are growing. Then we have AA growth, which means they don't necessarily have a lot of assets, but they could be Henrys and have a lot of opportunity for growth. Then we have AAR, which stands for a client that might have a lot of assets, but is probably in retirement. That's what the R stands for. So they're drawing down their accounts. And then beyond that, we have clients that are, below that in terms of not much assets, not much in growth opportunity. And then we have customers, which are really not clients, but they do deserve some place in our client service model because they maybe purchased an insurance policy from us, but they don't have an ongoing financial planning relationship. As far as how I use those parameters to input my clients, it was a lot by feel. You know, I tried to make sure that any clients with over, you know, $1 million in assets showed up in that higher end. But I also looked at clients that I enjoyed working with, clients that I feel never give me, that I try to look for clients that I look forward to having meetings with, and excluded the clients that when I look at my calendar in the morning, I am like feeling anxiety because I know it's not going to be a fun time. And thankfully, most of my clients are friends. Most of my clients are really good people. But after I spoke with Joe, I did some analytics on my book and noticed that the way that I have it segmented right now doesn't really reflect where my revenue is coming from and what ultimately makes me feel fulfilled in my business.
I think it would be interesting exercise if you agree. I'm putting you on the spot here, but take the way you've currently done it, right? And then try ours and put them side by side and see how many people are at the same level, or if ours shows them different than yours, and what makes sense and is not only realistic, but equitable for the client. And maybe it frees you up more if we were to tweak the service model. I mean, you can't take somebody and make a drastic change to their service model, but there might be people that you're over servicing. There might be some people being underserviced that deserve more attention. So it might be good exercise. Let me ask you this, how many relationships, do you know how many different households you manage currently?
Yeah, so I had 134 when I spoke with you yesterday to prepare, and I have 135 now.
Hey, you got an account in the last 24 hours. Congratulations.
Hey, I gotta count it. Every one of them counts.
So as you sit here today with 134, now 135 clients, are you concerned, about capacity as you continue to grow? Because you're young in the business, you have a big runway ahead of you. As you continue to grow, how do you feel about that? Are you concerned about capacity as you grow?
Yeah, I'm concerned now.
Rightfully so.
I never heard of what was it, Dunbar's
number? Yeah, look it up.
Yeah, but I think that's really interesting. I will say I think it might be kind of high for our business, because and the reason why I say that is because I like giving a lot of service to my clients. And that might be something that I have to rethink myself, but I give my clients a lot of service. And I find that even when I say that I'm going to meet with a client 2 times a year or 1 time a year, if I really go back and look at the amount of times that I hopped on a phone call with them or had an impromptu meeting, it's always more, because I've positioned myself with my clients to make them feel comfortable reaching out to me before they make any financial decision. So quite literally, right before our call, I had somebody call me telling me that they're going to buy a car, and it's a nice car and it's an expensive car, and they wanted to get my advice on it. So he called me. I picked up because I like working with this guy. Even though I was busy, I did pick up. It was a half-hour call. That half-hour call is about 50% of the time that I would normally schedule for a portfolio review. Do I count that call as a portfolio review? Not really, but no. It's still time that I'm never going to get back. And, so when I look at the 135 households that I have, and specifically the fact that only 34 of the 135 make up 35 million of the 47.
Okay, so say that again. Let me make sure I heard that. 35 of your 135 relationships make up 35 of your 47 million.
Yeah, so maybe
Right.
another way of putting that, if you take 35, that's 74.4%. So 74.4% of, yeah, that's, but
It's that Pareto's principle.
everyone knows
right?
this. Yeah, everyone knows this, but then, you do it yourself and you look at your own book and then you're like, wow, that's a lot. That means that I have 100 households that I could theoretically get rid of, and I would only lose 25% of my revenue.
Right. And look, we're not telling you to hand off those 100 clients, but the beauty and the potential of your situation is if you just replicated each of those 35 clients, your business would double and you'd have more free time because you'd have 100 fewer clients from those smaller ones. 12 million, right? 12 million of your 47 is across 100 households. It's a very small average account size. So your goal as you grow is fewer, bigger relationships.
Right.
Those are very interesting statistics, but they fall true to form with your numbers. It makes a lot of sense to me. So here's the last question for you. Based on where you are today, what ideas, what are your plans to handle this immediate, not in a bad way, but you're at an inflection point, right? You're at a tipping point where you can make some changes. What are your thoughts as you sit there today on freeing up capacity? Are you going to bring in a mini Gaetano?
Yeah. So I have a couple of plans. One of them is to go through your process and resegment my book. I also am currently in search of sorry, I just wanted to make sure. I saw Sharon pop on by accident.
That's okay.
So I want to make sure that I resegment my book. I do want to bring on a junior advisor that I can work hand in hand with on some of these clients that are below. Certainly the 54 clients that have less than $100,000 with me. I want to make sure that those households are not being abandoned, but
they still might have potential, right?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I also did some metrics around the amount of households that are contributing money into accounts versus withdrawing, and I have 26 households that are saving over $1,000 a month, and another 32 that are saving over $500 a month. So into investment accounts. So
great.
Those relationships mean a lot to me because I think those relationships, they're reminded of the work that we're doing every month when they look at their bank account and and money gets transferred. So I also find that people that are contributing to accounts are a little bit more impervious to market swings because generally they see the balance of their accounts going up no matter what. And that is a good client to have. So I, to organize my answers to your question is I'm going to resegment my book, and hopefully the result will be that less clients are getting the elite kind of service than I'm currently giving them right now. Which, by the way, 65% of my clients are getting portfolio reviews at least every 6 months, which is a lot. I also I'm actively looking for a junior advisor. I actually have two guys that used to be in my fraternity, like probably 10 years younger than me. So I don't really know them, but they were referred to me through people for like a mentorship program where I talk to them just out of, courtesy once a quarter, just to help them out because they're in the business. And I'm hoping to transition some of those conversations into potentially them coming and working with us. And then the third thing that I want to do is start to consider some of these monthly contributions as part of the criteria in my service model, because prior to some of the data, some of the, prior to seeing some of the data that I recently pulled, I never really looked at monthly contributions into an account as something to consider.
Oh, it makes for a
And
stickier client, no doubt.
yeah. So I guess I need to sure up what criteria matters to me, resegment my book, and then, I have to find somebody to help me out with this. And that,
Correct.
the goal is by January 1st, or at least the first quarter, to have control over all this.
I think it's great. It's great. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Very good insights. I think you have some action items to take away with. And I would say to everybody on the call today, look at where you are. How many relationships do you manage? Do you need to go through a segmentation and tiering exercise? Are people falling through the cracks? Are there people you're over servicing? And really see how you can create bandwidth to continue to grow and take your practices to levels beyond where you are today. So Gaetano, I think we should definitely have a chat offline. Appreciate the time, and congrats on your new account since yesterday. And I had a meeting yesterday and got a new relationship also for coaching. So happy about that.
Hey, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, so we're going to hand it back to Joe Halpern so he can just have some closing comments. Joe, all yours.
Excellent, Gaetano. Thank you very much for participating. And Michael Silva, as always, that was
My
really
pleasure.
informative, And I want to just make a couple of final comments and a conclusion here. Right in the beginning, Michael had mentioned that an outsourced CIO really allows you to free up time. And not only allows you to free up time, right? And then there's the later comments in terms of lack of services cited by clients. So one of the main reasons a client may leave is a lack of service. And some of that lack of service is just that communication that Michael and Gaetano just spoke about. But ultimately, what we're here to do is to expand your offerings, right? And that's going to add to your services, add to your offerings, and allow you to do what you do best. And then finally, on what was a really informative coaching session there, right, what we really want to do is align and partnering to get scale and exponential growth. And so part of that is segmenting and part of that is podding as discussed. And again, right there, what we're really trying to do is allow advisors to simply work on their business and not really in it, right? So this whole element of being able to segment and understand it. And just one quick note, we already provide a lot of flow data for our advisors, and Gaetano, rest assured, we're actually actively working on that next generation, which will give you even more information that will allow you to align and really figure out, the most efficient way forward. So once again, Michael, thank you so much for this coaching session, and thank you everybody for attending. And that concludes our call today.